I was just an English teacher.
What you just said there was the reason why I started it. That phrase you just said, just an English teacher. I'm not even joking, because there was so many people that you and I work with, that I work with, and they would describe themselves as that, as just an English teacher. And I hated it because nobody was just an English teacher. Welcome to a Vietnam podcast. We are at the start of season 14, episode 1. And I'm really excited for today's episode for several reasons. So my name's Neil Mackay. I'm your host. I came to Vietnam for a holiday or a vacation if you're American in 2015. Loved it. Came back in 2016 and basically have never left since. There's something about Vietnam, there's something about Saigon that just draws people to it, that keeps you here as well. And I started this podcast in 2019 just as a hobby. Basically, I wanted to get to know people in Saigon. I wanted to know more about their backstories. And now, over 300 episodes later, and the longest running English language podcast in Vietnam, I've set out what I wanted to achieve, and I'm going to keep on doing it. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And I'm really excited for today's guest because, incredibly, I looked it up today. He was on the 4th ever episode of what was then 7 Million Bikes, a Saigon podcast. One of the first ever guests on the show. Well, I went back and listened to it today and cringed at the audio quality because it was so bad.
And say, hey, you know you're going to hell if you're a Jew. So yeah, so stuff like that, but never anything bad.
And what? Never anything bad.
I mean,
that's all.
It never affected me emotionally. I knew who I was. I knew who I am. Like I knew that I knew that I didn't want to be them. Like, why would I want to go around and tell somebody, oh, you know, you're going to hell because of your religion? I'm gonna do a stupid accent, but they would say stuff like, I just want to let you know we really care about you, but that's why we're telling you that you're gonna go to hell if you're a Jew. But there's another way.
Awful sound. Really proud now of where we've come. I mean, this podcast has now won awards for being the best interview podcast in Asia, which is still mind-blowing. And I incredibly won best audio producer as well, which was pretty cool as well. But it has come a long way since that first episode. Now, not just the technicalities, not just the audio. I'm really excited to talk to my guest today because we met teaching English together. That's how we got to know each other, how we became friends. We've kept in touch ever since. And I was really sad to see him go, actually, on the first episode back in 2019. It was just before he left. So he came to Vietnam as an English teacher. And we talked a bit about anti-Semitism. He is Jewish. We talked about race. We talked about being from America. And we talked about adoption as well, because he is an adoptee. And it is one of the coolest things to see that my guest today actually went back to America to go back to law school and is now a lawyer. And not just a lawyer, he's an adoption lawyer and helps families adopt, which is just really, really amazing, and works for his family business, works for his mum, who also is an adoption lawyer. So I am really, really excited to bring back on the show with a tinge of sadness because he's about to leave Vietnam again, but with a tinge of sadness and a lot of happiness. Welcome back, Sandy Ernst, on a Vietnam podcast.
Well, thank you very much. That's a great introduction. I appreciate that, and congratulations on the award for the best podcast in Southeast Asia. That's pretty incredible, because I remember when we did that podcast in your apartment, and I honestly had no idea it would turn out into this, and that you would make a career. But you know, that's awesome.
Thank you very much. No, me either, not at all. So do you remember? So I think I mentioned in the intro, I had a condenser microphone, which is it was a ball. I still have it in the cupboard. It doesn't work. It broke after about 6 months and it never broke. It never worked again. But every 6 months, I'll bring it out of the cupboard and plug it in again just to see if it come to life. But it never does. And the audio quality is pretty bad. It picks up all the noise in the room. And did we do it in the bedroom? That sounds bad. Did we do it in the bedroom? Did we do it in the bedroom or the living room?
I think it was the living room.
Yeah. Because when I first started, I was trying my best to get good audio. And so first episode I ever recorded was with Kim Nguyen, who's still friends with to this day. And we did it in the living room. And then me and her now husband, my good friend as well, Lewis, we moved to the bedroom. We did it in the bedroom with pillows and blankets everywhere because he was trying to tell me how to dampen the sound and things like this. And I can't even remember if it was much better. It was probably a tiny little bit better. And then I did another episode with J.K. Hobson, and again, we did it in the bedroom too. and we were in the bedroom for a good 2 or 3 hours. Got really hot and steamy in there, I remember, because we turned off the aircon and everything. So things have come a long way. We're still doing it in my front room. So if you are watching this on YouTube and you can see this beautiful surrounding, this is actually in my front room, but we're trying to make it look as professional as possible. So you might think, wow, they're in a real studio. It's still just my front room. But the equipment has increased a lot. So what else do you remember from those early days of podcasting?
I just remember thinking that you'd been doing the stand-up comedy and you had, just launched this podcast and, you were getting all these guests. So I was actually surprised that you asked me to be on it, because compared to some of the folks like J.K. Hobson, comedian, I'm just a guy. I was just an English teacher. So
that was the reason. What you just said there was the reason why I started it. That phrase you just said, just an English teacher. I'm not even joking, because there was so many people that you and I work with, that I work with, and they would describe themselves as that, as just an English teacher. And I hated it, because nobody was just an English teacher. There was people like yourself with super interesting stories. I remember, I'm forgetting his name now, the South African guy, Bryn, maybe I'm getting his name wrong, and he made stuff out of leather. He had like a leather workshop. Other people were dancers. Everyone had a story. And to be an English teacher at the school we worked at, which was quite a good one, everybody had to have a degree. So everybody had a degree in finance or drama or something different. And everyone you met had something else about them. And I was like, I want to know more about them, because it really frustrated me that people would say exactly what you just said. I'm just an English teacher. And also what you just said there as well, like, I'm just a guy. I got this, I'm interviewing someone tomorrow. And last week when I messaged her, she was like, oh, I don't have anything interesting to say. And I was like, everybody has something interesting to say. This podcast is just about sharing stories, and everybody has a story to share.
Well, I have had a lot of stories, especially living here, even being on this trip. So it's always interesting coming back to Saigon. There's always something to see. There's always something happening.
Well, tell me, why did you come to Saigon in the first place?
So in the beginning, it sounds like the
It
Bible.
was dark. Yeah, I know. Yeah. There was light.
I had reached a point in my life where I had wanted something different. I had actually previously attended law school. It hadn't really worked out for me. It wasn't a good match. So I had been staying on a friend's couch in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I was a ski bum for 3 months, and I was trying to figure out what to do.
I didn't know that. I didn't know you became a Mormon as well, if you're in Utah.
I didn't convert. And,
no, thank God.
And it had always been back in my mind, because when I was in college and university, I had met several Vietnamese people, and they had always told me that they had met foreigners in Saigon. And one of the things they said was they learned Vietnamese, and Vietnamese is easy.
Somebody told you that.
Yeah, one of my friends, this girl named Thuy, I haven't spoke to her in years, but she told me they're English teachers in Saigon and they spoke Vietnamese and they learned it because it was easy. There are a lot of foreigners in Saigon, but I do not think that learning Vietnamese is easy. I only know maybe 1 or 2 expats that speak fluent Vietnamese, but they had kind of planted that seed. So about 10 years later, when I was looking for something to do, why don't I go teach English in Asia? So I applied to a company called EL First, and I got offered a job in Shanghai, China. And I went on Facebook and I was like, I'm going to be moving to Shanghai. And my Vietnamese friend saw that and said, don't move to Shanghai. Go teach English in Vietnam. It's much better. And the air quality won't kill you. And so, yeah, I listened to them. I looked around, how do I get my degree? And there are 2 different, or how do I get my teaching certificate? And there are several options that I looked at. And ultimately, I decided to do a CELTA program through an English language school in Saigon. And I guess that's how it started.
So how much preparation did you do before you came to Vietnam? Because you are a bit of a rarity where you seem to have maybe planned a bit more to come here than most people.
So I think I had watched a few documentaries. I think a lot of people say this, so I know that I'd seen a few of Anthony
I was
Bourdain's
about to say, you
various
watched Anthony
shows
Bourdain.
going to Vietnam, and then also Top Gear had done an episode where they rode motorbikes from Saigon to Hanoi. And so that was definitely kind of, I watched those to kind of see what it was like.
Documentaries.
Yeah. And what was it? It was documenting events. So it's a documentary. But yeah, not much preparation. I had talked to a few of my Vietnamese friends, and they were basically like, they were from the countryside and in Long An province. And they told me, oh, I don't drive in Saigon because it's too scary. So it's like, that doesn't really help me. But yeah, I didn't do that much preparation.
Did you learn any of the language before you got here?
No, because the company that I went and did my CELTA at had said for 1 week you would get like emergency Vietnamese. And no, like I guess emergency or it was not immersion. I actually think it was like a week. I can't remember. But it was a 1 week, I guess, basic training, simple, very simple things, numbers, how to call people. That's how I learned. I learned Oi my first week here. And yeah, so that's what I did.
My favorite story is a girl that we worked with when we first came here, Nicole. I doubt you're still listening to this years later after you left Vietnam, but if you are, let us know. Nicole, actually, to her credit, spent a long time learning Vietnamese. She used Rosetta Stone, you know, the famous language learning. She moved to Saigon. Rosetta Stone was northern Vietnamese. So she got to Saigon and everything she learned was almost useless because the northern dialect is pretty different to the southern dialect. So I always thought that was pretty funny that she completely wasted her time learning basically the wrong language.
I forgot about Rosetta Stone.
Yeah, I know, right? Every airport used to have Rosetta Stone, right?
I don't think it's very good.
No.
I used it for Spanish, even though I had minored in Spanish. I tried to, after a few years after I had graduated, to use it to relearn Spanish, and it's just I don't recommend it.
Well, we'll blame Rosetta Stone not learning the wrong language then. So you came to Vietnam 2019. What were your first thoughts when you?
So I arrive in the airport. I have my letter, go through customs, pick up my bags. They arranged for somebody to pick me up at the airport. And I get in the car and we're, driving along. And I mean, I've been to other places. I've been to South America. I've been to Israel, and then Canada. So, but nothing like this. And I didn't see, for about 20 minutes, I didn't see one expat or foreigner. And I was basically like, what have I gotten myself into? So I guess as we're kind of approaching District 1, you're starting to see more cafes, it's more English, and there's a Western guy at a bar by himself with like his hand on his head. And this is about 10 in the morning. And he looks absolutely miserable. And I'm just like, I hope that doesn't turn into me. And then we get to my hotel. It's down a hem. I didn't know what they're called there. And the driver's just like pointing there, go down there, go down there. And there's a lot of traffic. And so I just handed him, I think I actually handed him about 500. I handed him whatever was in my wallet. So I think I actually handed him 500,000 dong, and he walked me pretty much 100 meters down this hem to the front door. Now I drive by that, or I see that now, and it's totally fine. But I was freaked out. Yeah, about crossing the street, and and the narrow alleyways, and you see the wires, how they do the electrical wires here, and it's just intense. It's
wild,
intense.
Yeah. It's so funny you said about seeing that guy, because if you are watching this on YouTube, I'm going to put this picture up right now, right here. You sent me a picture yesterday of almost the same scene.
Oh yeah, so I did a guided tour yesterday, and there was off of Bui Vien Street at about 6:30 in the morning. I don't think he was an expat. I think he was just a foreign tourist, passed out on a table, all arms and legs spread out, and people are just walking by. And nobody's like, "How are you doing?" or asking if he needs help. And Everybody's just going about their day, and he's, sleeping on a table, 6:30.
So if you are listening to this, just go to YouTube. You'll be able to see it right now. I'm going to put this picture up. Honestly, it made me laugh so much. I think the longer I've been here, though, there's lots of things that you can say, oh, it's Vietnam and whatnot. I've seen that same thing happen in every country I've lived in. I remember in New Zealand, we woke up one morning, we were in a friend's house. They lived in the middle of the city. And still one of the funniest things that's ever happened to me. We looked out the window and there was this guy, similar to the picture you sent me, face down, passed out asleep in the middle of this, walkway. And I went down and I shook him and I was like, because we were actually genuinely worried he might be dead. It's like 7, 8, 9 in the morning. I can't remember. Sunday morning, guy's passed out in the middle of the road street, hem, for want of a better word, even though it's in New Zealand, like laneway. And one of the funniest things ever, I shook him and thankfully he woke up and I was like, wait, he's not dead. And I was like, are you okay? Best answer ever. Oh yeah, no problem. I'm fine. Thank you. I was like, you're far from fine, my friend. But yeah, he was alive. So, I mean, hopefully that guy was alive. We don't actually know if if he was.
I mean, I assume somebody would have done something. But I have no idea.
Never know. Well, it's so funny. So you left 2019. We're in 2025 now. Some things have changed a lot. Some things don't change at all. So we talked about last time you left to go back to become a lawyer. So tell us a bit about that, because I think it's just amazing. So well done to you for what you've done. It's pretty crazy to think how far you said in the beginning, like, congratulations to me. It's amazing to think how far both of us have come in 5 years, 6 years.
Right. So the last time I was going to law school, and now I went to law school for 3 years, and then I've been in practice for about 2.5. That in itself is hard to believe. But yeah, the short answer to that is law school was absolutely terrible. I think if you ask any lawyer, I don't think anybody actually enjoys the process.
Why do you do it then?
I don't know. I mean, it was the highest of highs and lowest of lows.
Yeah,
sometimes you are really enjoying it, and you're learning about the American legal system, and you're reading about cases. And one of the things I think that kind of defines the American legal system is a good example is we talk about negligence, and you kind of have to be, most people in America or in Western states are very aware of how their actions can impact other people, such as driving a car through a red light, driving down the wrong end of driving the wrong way down the street.
I feel like you're listing things here that happen in Vietnam.
Yes, it's very, very different.
Yeah.
And this took, not saying Vietnam won't get there, but it took us hundreds of years to get to this point.
It's getting there already.
Yeah,
I mean, it's changed
to define these
dramatically.
to define these terms. So law school was pretty terrible. It was hard. You were going to class. So my schedule was, I worked it like a job. So I would go to school, I would study for an hour, do my classes, and then after my class would end, I would stay to school 5 to 8. And so I was putting, pretty much 10 to 12-hour days, 5 days a week. Then took the bar exam. That was awful too. Almost had a mental breakdown there. I actually had moved back to my parents' house, and I woke up to go study for the bar exam. And I woke up, go downstairs to my desk, and I just getting a headache. So I went back upstairs to the guest bedroom and lied down, staring at the ceiling. And then my mom starts banging on the door saying, "You got to study." And I'm like, no, I can't. I physically can't. But ended up working out. And then now 3 years or 2.5 years being into a lawyer, it's actually not that bad compared to all their specialties are different, but mine's pretty relaxed.
Well, my question was it worth it?
Yes, I think so. I definitely think so. I had really wanted to, I guess, be a lawyer for a long time. And yeah, it did, feel kind of like this. I had this like intellectual curiosity because my parents were lawyers. One of my grandfathers was a lawyer. And it actually kind of made me relate better to my parents because I kind of see how they are and how it kind of molded what they eventually became. But it was worth it. And my job currently right now, I love my job. It's, one of the benefits is I got to come out here for a month. So but that's not what I do it. But yeah, what they say is in court when you do adoptions and when we help our clients adopt children and when we go for the judge, judges are usually like, this is the best part of my day. I get to, it's all
No
down here
way.
after this, but this is the best part. I get to help make families and it's been rewarding in that everybody's very happy. Sometimes the clients are a little stressed up until the hearing, but once that happens and the judge signs the final order of adoption, everybody's happy. We take pictures and it's great.
That's amazing. And we talked about it the last time on the show. Obviously, we talked personally about it, but how does that feel for you as someone who's adopted?
I think it feels good because I know where I came from, which is I was born in Tegucigalpa, Honduras. I was born into a house without electricity, and I was given this amazing opportunity. It's almost like basically winning the lottery. So now as an attorney, I see all the finances of both parties, and I think it's a great thing. It's a very selfless thing that these birth mothers are doing. They're recognizing that they cannot take care of a child, and instead of, because I read stories about foster care system or where some of these children end up, and it's horrifying and it's heartbreaking, and they're making this decision, to give this child a much better life. And when I'm looking at the files and I'm looking at our clients, it's just an amazing, they now have definitely a clear path forward. And when you've met, and when you met birth mothers who are living in extended stay hotels and it's 2 beds and 6 children, it's pretty, you see a lot of, you see reality that most people either ignore or pretend doesn't exist, or they don't care. But when you see that, it does make you feel good that you're helping somebody.
That's amazing. I mean, I've almost got a little tear in my eye, and I say almost because I don't cry on this podcast very often. I think only ever once. But I am emotional at that, and that is really beautiful. So well done, man. I just think where we've both come since 2019 is pretty incredible. Well, bringing it back to Vietnam, one of the things that obviously has been amazing throughout the years, so obviously we kept in touch, social media, messaging, it's so easy to keep in touch, but it's more than that. You've been back, is this your 3rd trip back since you left, or the 2nd? Or 4th or 5th? I can't keep up.
I think it's 3.
It's 3,
it's the
right?
3rd time.
So you've been back to Vietnam several times. So one question I want to ask about, but we'll get to in a minute, is the changes, because I get told by Adri to stop going on, but other people as well. And I know myself, being here for so long, it's really easy to talk about the changes, but I think it will be interesting to hear it from your point of view, because you probably see it more than most, especially with extended stays away. But you obviously were attracted to Vietnam in the beginning. You did a bit of research, decided to come here. A lot of people come back. What makes you keep coming back?
Well, one of the things I didn't expect is that I would, meet great friends like you and pretty much everybody that I met within my first 2 to 3 weeks that I met at ILA are still here.
Yeah, it's crazy, right?
And so I actually did not expect that I'd still be talking to all these people, years later. And, I love getting to catch up, see where everybody's been, but coming back, it's like I never left. But also, I'm 37 and solo traveling when you're 37, it's not as cool. So it's nice being able to go to a place where you know people.
Well, you mentioned earlier you went on a group tour, which I thought was pretty funny in itself. But I was like, fair enough, you're here by yourself. You went on a group tour to Moine, which again, to me, is weird. But again, because I live here, what was that like then, going on a group tour as a solo 37?
Oh, it was great. There were 4 Singaporeans, there are 4 Filipinos, and there are 3 Japanese ladies, and then me. And no, it was a lot of fun. And segueing back to the changes, I first took a group tour in Saigon about a week after I'd finished my CELTA. The tour guides would basically take you to places and be like, go and look, have a look. Now we have lunch. Still like that in Phu Quoc. They haven't really changed. But Saigon, this guy's English was amazing. And then I did a tour last week to Monkey Island, and her English was amazing. And they're telling you information. That's something that didn't used to happen. And I mean, I think it's great. And I like learning about things and, meeting other people. So It's actually kind of nice because previously when you did group tours or it'd be mostly Americans or, you know, Australians, English people. But this is the first time I've actually done a group tour that was in English where everybody was still from the East. But everybody was very nice. It was interesting.
You always know when you're with Americans in your tour because you normally hear them before you see them. But
Yeah, I mean, that can be true. Although, interestingly, I thought, I've been talking to somebody about that in Lao. I think it's right, but I think Americans, if they're by themselves, I think they're pretty good.
well, so obviously Adri's American. I've lived in America. What I've noticed from living there, right, is that you're just all loud. And that's just normal because if everyone's the same volume, and I really understand, that phrase in the UK, you must have heard of like the stiff upper lip and things like this. So I realized, obviously, living all over that in the UK, for example, on the bus or whatnot, we'll have a conversation like this to each other where the person next to you can hear you fine, but the person behind you can't hear you because you're having a conversation at a lower voice. Whereas Americans are going to be on a bus and they're going to be like, yeah, so yesterday I went. But everyone talks like that. And one of the times I had this realization was Adri and I, we hadn't been together very long. We were on a tram in Melbourne in Australia where we met. And at the other end of the tram were these two Americans talking. And Adri turned around to me and she went, geez, we are really loud, aren't we? And I was like, yep, no. Even Australians are similar to the Brits in terms of like stiff upper lip, kind of keep things a little bit quiet, talk to each other. And when I've lived in America and when you go there, everyone speaks at the same volume. So you're not really that loud, but then it's when you transplant yourself and suddenly you leave and you're in a different population. That's when Americans get really loud.
Yeah, I would say we're pretty loud. I agree.
Well, you're one of the loudest.
I know. And then one of my other friends I went to with, I did Celta with this guy named Dan Martin, who also used to work at ILA too. He's really loud as well. And actually, when we
get
together, it's
oh my
nothing.
God.
I can even hear it. It's nothing but yelling. But I will say that Americans are loud, I guess, sober. But Brits and Australians, once they start having a couple pints, the volume starts getting loud.
I'll give you that. I mean, and I love Americans, obviously. Some of my best friends and my wife are American. I think they're great, and their excitement and their positivity is amazing. And it's just quite funny, though, because, when you do go on, like, I'm just remembering we went on a group tour in Australia even, and it's just, Americans are so loud. You're just like, just bring it down a notch. You're overseas, but it's fine. So talking about the level of English, so you've noticed that then since you've come back?
Yes, it's much better.
It's crazy, right? And I like laugh about it because that's what we did. We taught English. Like, why are we surprised at this? Like when I've been here 10 years and it's crazy to think, I remember teaching kindergarten 10 years ago. So they were 2 years old learning English. So what's the surprise now that there's 12-year-olds and 14 and 15-year-olds that are speaking fluent English? Because they have been learning for a long time. And I make the joke as well that, we teach English so we don't have to learn Vietnamese. But it's amazing that the level of English here, I notice it as well. It's just, it's incredible how much it's changed in that time.
I don't know. I mean, I asked my tour guide, Tamune. I know I'm mispronouncing that.
Nobody knows. Moine, it's Moine.
I asked, did you study English in school? And of course he said, and this is true, every Vietnamese person studies English. And I was like, well, how is your pronunciation good? Are you going to English Center? And he was like, no, I just watch movies, TV, and listen to music. And I just practice what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I mean, the best one, I've shared this before, was there was a server that worked in Union Jacks in District 1. And the first time I met him, he had a Birmingham accent, like full on. He's like, all right, yeah, what you? I was like, do you study in Birmingham? And he's like, no, I've never left Vietnam. That's my terrible Birmingham accent. But I never left Vietnam. I was like, but wait, you sound like you're from Birmingham. And that's quite a niche accent as well. So I just assumed he studied in high school in Birmingham or Wolverhampton, somewhere like that. He says, no, I just learned speaking English from watching Peaky Blinders.
That's quite a show to learn English from.
Right. And it is such a distinct accent. And so he had this really, really distinct, thick Birmingham accent, which probably is like Peaky Blinders is set when, like the 50s? I've only ever seen a few episodes.
I thought like the early 1900s.
Maybe, yeah.
Admittedly, I only made it past the first episode.
Yeah.
Too British for me.
Yeah, so maybe the early 1900s, I'm not sure. So he probably has like a distinct Birmingham accent from the 1900s. If he probably went to Birmingham, they'd be like, why do you sound like you're from round here but 100 years ago, something like that. But, the English levels have increased in the pronunciation. The big pronunciation is the big difference that I've seen, because it used to be pronunciation. Sometimes they could speak a bit of English, but you wouldn't be able to really understand what they would say because the pronunciation wasn't great. Now, it's mental. So what other big changes have you noticed in Saigon?
The electric vehicles have really taken off, and it's something really interesting to see that type of infrastructure and how we don't have that basically in the United States. So I think it's great, and they have their own taxi service with EV cars and bikes, and I think it's a great thing to see that kind of development going on. I've also noticed the numerous massive electronic billboards, so that's also new. Don't remember that. They didn't have
maybe
that.
A downside, isn't it? Yeah,
Possibly. And then everything behind the sign talking about Two Duck City was not there. I don't think 4 years ago.
No,
so all that's it's
2TM.
The growth and the growth is incredible.
Yeah. It's interesting. I want to go back a bit. You mentioned about the negligence as a lawyer, noticing the difference. What things as a lawyer do you see here in Vietnam where you kind of wince, or you think maybe America's got this right or Vietnam's got it right? Do you see things like that now through a different lens from the last time you were here, now that you're a lawyer?
Oh yeah. I see people welding without what those masks are called, the way they clean windows, the way they do construction. It's just in my head, when I see that, I'm just instantly think lossy, because you can get away with that type of stuff in America. But on the opposite end though of what I kind of like to see in America, and America is very state specific, so I'm really only talking about Georgia and specifically Atlanta, where I'm from, is that what I like about Vietnam, what you can do, what you can't do in Atlanta, is you can basically have a shop and live in it, or you have all these mixed use properties. Whereas Atlanta, it's pretty much you have an area that's own business, then you have an area that's own residential. And so you really don't have businesses on the first floor of residential buildings. And then you also don't have people living in certain areas downtown unless it's a designated apartment building.
I think as well, there is this massive conflict, right, between life in Vietnam, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but it's a little bit lawless, right? More lawless, less kind of rules, more fluid. Then you have America, Australia, so many rules in Australia, the UK, and then you have consequences if you break those rules, right? So like you have lawsuits and fines and things like this, whereas here, it's much more fluid, much more free. Where is the line on that though? Because I don't even know, because I love it here for all those reasons, but there are also reasons why we have it like that where we're from. Because like you're saying, construction, I mean, nobody wears hard-toed shoes here, for example, right? They're all wearing literally rubber slippers and working on a construction site, and you're just like, literally could lose your toes in your job right now, or lose your foot, or that's going to impact the rest of your life. There is a reason why in Australia and the UK, all these other countries, there's a very strict law that you can't go on a building site without a hard hat, without steel toe cap boots. Like, we have those reasons for people's safety. But so I don't think those have gone too far. But do you think maybe we've gone too far at back home or in the West, or where is that line?
I'm not exactly sure where the line is, but I do think that to some extent, maybe we have gone too far in the West. I'm not saying that steel-toed boots are bad, and I don't think you should be wearing sandals on a construction site.
That's an extreme example.
It is. But I do think that what happens is when you have these massive regulations, especially in terms of business and building code, it makes it very, very hard for people to even get licenses to build and even start a business. Whereas here, it kind of seems like it's much easier to start your own business or to open a restaurant. Or even like a little coffee shop, or even the little food carts and beverage carts they have. Like if you tried to do that in Atlanta, just on the sidewalk, you'd get shut down immediately because they'd come and say health codes and, violations. Where I think a good rule that everybody says here is you go and eat where there's a long line. That's how you know that, the food is probably pretty good, or you're not going to get sick. So in some ways, I think this place actually, or Vietnam, polices itself.
That's what makes it so difficult, right? Because you're talking about food codes, and that's a good thing, right? It's there for a reason. We're going to make sure that this food is safe. But I don't know if it's right, because we have such strict food health and safety guidelines. But exactly here, there's a place on the corner. It's actually gone now because they're building a building, because they build buildings everywhere. But I never ate at it. It was, not gonna lie, fucking disgusting. I was like, where are they getting the water from? It was not connected to any water, not connected to any power. It was literally the most Vietnamese thing you've ever seen. Just plastic stools, a food cart. It was packed. Morning, day and night. Always, every single day packed. I remember saying to Adrian, like, how do people know about this place? Like, it was clearly people were coming to this destination, but it looked absolutely disgusting. But just like you said, people probably not getting sick from it, because if they were, they wouldn't be going back. So I don't even know where the line is. I don't even know what the line is anymore, because we just have these strict rules, which I believe are probably there for a reason. Not probably. They are there for a reason, and they're good for us. But then at the other end of the spectrum, Vietnam doesn't really have them so much. I mean, it does, but it doesn't. And life still goes on here, and we're still fine. So I don't even know the answer to that.
I mean, I can't speak for the line in Vietnam, but I will say, like, in Atlanta, I wouldn't see a problem if somebody had a hot dog cart or wanted to sell that. I mean, and then maybe had to go through some training on sanitary processes and how to keep everything hygienic. Obviously, that's necessary because people in America will take advantage of that, not what they're doing, what they're told. But now it's just, well, first of all, it's pretty much illegal in Atlanta. And then in places like New York City, to get a license to even operate a food cart, I think it's, last time I've checked, I watched a documentary, it's a couple $100,000 to do that, to get a food cart. So yeah,
Wow.
I think that's crazy.
Yeah, it's someone's gone wrong in the middle. So when you come back to Vietnam quite a lot, what do you miss the most when you're not here?
So obviously, one of the things that I miss the most is I found that it's just very, very easy to make friends. In addition to coming and seeing my great, wonderful friends that I met at the beginning, I also miss how convenient this place is. I mean, there are convenience stores everywhere. In the area I'm staying right now, there's like 3 or 4 in the same block. There are also numerous pharmacies to get medication. I don't get sick very much, but I remember 2 to 3 times that from my apartment, I live in Midtown Atlanta, where I think in the past 4 years, I'd gotten the flu twice, and I could barely get out of bed. So I had to basically order medicine from these pharmacies through Uber. And I remember like the cough syrup and the nasal decongestant and all the cough drops, everything totaled to like $70. Plus you got to tip the guy. So it's $90 to get medication to treat like flu symptoms and severe cold symptoms. And that is something I wouldn't have to worry about here because the medication's as effective.
Yeah. Well, I was about to say, did you notice that we've never brought up the cost of living here, but then you just brought it up? I think it goes without saying, it's an enjoyable fact of Vietnam that it is cheaper here. That just goes without saying. But in everything we've talked about today, and every conversation I have with people, it's never the first thing. It's never the fifth thing that anyone says. It's not the reason why people love it here. It's not the reason why people come back. Maybe it is, and it's just underlying so much they don't talk about it. I lived in New Zealand. It's super expensive there. I still loved it. I didn't not like it because it was expensive. So for me, whether it costs a lot or it costs a little, there's things that are nicer that it helps. It's nicer that medication is cheaper. It's things like that. But when I asked you that question, I love that your answer wasn't because it's cheaper. It's because it's more convenient, because it's more convenient because it's a better place to live. That made me laugh. When you said more convenient, I thought you were going to say a whole bunch of other stuff. Then you literally said because of convenience stores. But there are a lot of convenience stores and they are very convenient. So Sandy, thank you so much. It's amazing to have you back. Hopefully I will see you again soon. I doubt it's going to be that long before you're coming to visit again. You obviously love Vietnam and it's good that you have friends here that you can come and see. And maybe we'll get you back on in 5 years' time when we've been doing this for 10 years. And you'll be on a Vietnam podcast again. So Sandy, thank you so much. It's really good to have you back in Vietnam. Good to have you on a Vietnam podcast. And I'm excited to see all the amazing things that you do as a lawyer in America.
Thank you for having me. And it's amazing to see how far you've come and where this is heading. And I really do like the new short form content that you've been putting out. So
you know what? That's good to hear. Well, don't you forget, follow, subscribe, do all of that stuff. Then also the best thing that you can do is share this with somebody else who also loves Vietnam. So wherever you are in the world, maybe you're thinking of coming here, maybe you live here already and you just like hearing these stories, please share them with someone else. It's the best thing that you can do for this podcast. And as I said, go on all the social medias, everything like that. Go to vietnampodcast.com. Best thing you can do, send me a message as well. Nobody really ever sends me a message or leaves a comment. It makes me so sad. I know people are enjoying this, but I never really hear from anyone. So if you have made it to the end of this podcast, please drop me a message. Just say hello. Always love to hear from people.
I left you a comment on the banh mi and pie.
That's right, you did. Go check out the banh mi episode and pie. All right, Sandy, thank you very much. Thank you for watching, listening, whatever you're doing. Cheers.